So, thank you for joining me here this evening. As teachers, we do not take job action or even a vote on job action very lightly. We care deeply about our schools, our students, and our communities. Many of us are parents or grandparents ourselves. I myself am a proud grandfather. We know how anxious parents feel when their children's needs cannot be met at school. That's part of what this vote is all about. We do not consider job action unless it's absolutely necessary. We call this vote because after a year of bargaining, the table needed pressure. We've met more than 40 times, but since December, the parties were being driven further and further apart. The government, through the BC Public School Employers Association, tabled what we considered a very insulting initial wage proposal. It included up to an additional 2 years of no wage increase. They've also been trying to pretend that the recent BC Supreme Court ruling never happened. 2 weeks after the courts gave teachers back what was unconstitutionally stripped from our collective agreements, the government tabled language that would delete all of our working conditions again. That was disrespectful and cynical. BC teachers are asking for smaller classes, more one-on-one time for our students, extra help for those who need it, and more specialist teachers to enhance every student's educational experience. Yes, it will cost more to do that, but to make our education system better and reverse 12 years of cuts, but we think that's a very important investment to make. And that's why BC teachers voted this week overwhelmingly in favor of potential job action. A total of 26,051 teachers voted yes. In all, 29,301 teachers cast ballots. 89% voted yes. With this vote, BC teachers have sent a very clear message to our government. It's time to negotiate in good faith, take back the unreasonable proposals, and offer teachers a fair deal that also provides better supports for our students. And now I'd like to speak directly to our members, BC teachers. Thank you. Every one of you make a real, constructive, and positive difference in the lives of your students. The education of our children and youth that they receive is critical to our province, to our society, a democratic society. It's the caring and passionate professionals like you, helping children to develop emotionally, socially, and intellectually, to make our public education system as great as it is, even in an era of cuts. Thank you for all your dedication and energy. Thank you for the amazing work that you do every day in our classrooms. And thank you for standing behind your bargaining team with such strength, commitment, and resolve. Working together, we will get a fair, negotiated deal at the bargaining table. And now to BC students and parents. BC teachers remain committed to negotiating that deal at the table. That is our goal. There is no immediate job action. A strike vote is a normal process in labor relations and helps apply pressure to both parties during negotiations. We will only commence job action if there is no progress at the bargaining table. If job action becomes necessary, any initial action will not include immediate school closures or disruptions to our students. Teachers will not be asked to stop participating in voluntary activities, and teachers will not stop writing report cards or communicating with parents. Any initial job action will be administrative in nature and have no impact on our students' learning. If at some point talks stall or government does not move on key areas, that initial job action could escalate into rotating strikes. But once again, it depends on developments at the negotiating table. I encourage you to reach out to your local MLA and tell them to work with teachers, to work with us to get that negotiated deal at the table. And there will be no full-scale walkout as a result of this vote. Such action would require another province-wide vote of the BCTF membership. And that's a commitment that we've made to our members and to our parents. And I also want to thank our parents for the work that they do with their children and their support of us. And finally, my message to this government, to Premier Christy Clark and Education Minister Peter Fassbender. For 12 years, your government has been imposing unconstitutional laws, underfunding education, and trying to provoke teachers, and it's time to stop. Having the employer put language on the table to immediately delete our working conditions days after we won them was just unacceptable and very unreasonable. And that insulting salary offer that was put on the table initially was unnecessary. And then having your staff hand out a document that was riddled with errors, one with no name attached, no logo, no official source, provocation to try to scare parents, and that was just political mischief. Unfortunately, we see nothing but the same kind of behavior that the BC Supreme Court just said was bad faith. And just yesterday, the former chair of the BC School Employers Association went public and confirmed that your government never wanted a deal in 2012. Your government instead wanted a strike, you wanted to shut down schools, and you were against a deal that your own mediator helped negotiate. And you know, after 12 years, it's time to put the political agenda to the side, and it's time to negotiate fairly. We do not want a strike. We want a deal. Take the unfair concessions off the table, come to the table with a reasonable offer, and put the necessary funding to that table. So let's get that deal done together, and the sooner, the better. Thank you.
Jim, not very many kind words for the government. Do you think that they actually are willing to negotiate at this point? What is different this time around?
Well, you know, I have to remain very positive and optimistic through this all. And knowing their history over the years, and especially which, you know, came out very recently in the recent Supreme Court decision, I still need to believe for our members that a negotiated deal is possible at this table. And that, you know, when government says that they want a deal, I'm hoping that they say that in all sincerity. But they need to put the necessary funding at the table so we can get that fair deal for teachers and better supports for our students. And they need to be willing to make sure that there are smaller class sizes and more specialist teachers, more one-on-one support for our students come September.
Jim, I noticed this week and last week, a couple local, well-known local columnists criticized the union for not, revealing what its wage demands were. And I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to tell us what teachers want in terms of the increase if the last proposal was insulting.
Well, we've put a proposal on wages at the table back on by March 12th, 2013, as was agreed to by both parties. And what we want at the bargaining table is discussion about the proposal and about the concept that we've put forward. The concept of COLA, cost of living, the importance of having a cost of living article in our collective agreement to keep up with the cost of inflation, and have that discussion, an important discussion about how can we work together to ensure that there's comparability with some of our colleagues across Canada, where we've fallen way behind, where we're anywhere between 6th to 9th of the 10 provinces. And that's the discussion that we want to have with the employer. We want them to show us how we can work together to improve that piece. And, you know, putting a number to that market comparability is something we will do at the bargaining table and not in this news conference.
What's the sense in terms of timing now? What are your negotiators telling you about how long they want to sit for until we make a determination on strike action?
Well, like I say, it's, the strike vote is the first stage to put pressure on. And for us, it's not about going on strike. We don't want to go on strike. We want a deal at the bargaining table. We're at the table tomorrow. We've got a couple days next week, and then we'll talk about more days for the future. And it's going to be about how that table moves and what's the progress at that table. And that's what will determine whether we have to go into the first stage of job action. Like I say, we don't take that decision lightly, and what we want to see is progress at the bargaining table, and that's what we're going to work towards. And like I said, we want that deal sooner rather than later.
You've been a teacher for a long time. What's your sense that you guys can actually come to some sort of agreement, considering that a significant number of contract negotiation or agreements have been legislated?
I mean, that is our history in terms of government interference in the collective bargaining process, where they've interfered and legislated agreements rather than letting the two parties come to a deal at the bargaining table. That is our history. And I'm hoping that we're going to change that history in this round of bargaining. We wanted a negotiated deal at the table in the last round. We even wanted a longer term, but government did impose a 2-year term in the last round. They also imposed 2 years of zero. That was part of the legislation that confined us, and we did come to an agreement, though some of the terms were legislated. But I'm hoping and I'm hopeful that we can turn that history around. That's what we're going to work towards.
Jim, you said that the vote today is to give some pressure on the government, but don't you think so that also give pressure or scare the parents?
That's why, as part of the news conference today, I wanted to assure parents in terms of where our hopes are in terms of getting that deal at the table, and that our intention is not to disrupt their child's education, especially in a first stage. And that's why we have gone to taking the strike vote first, and we'll see what kind of pressure that will create. And you know, a strike vote also creates pressure for our members also in terms of getting that deal. And I'm hoping that we can get progress at the bargaining table, and I'm hoping we don't have to go to that first stage. But if we do, like I said, the first stage will not be interrupting school or our children's learning.
So is it fair to say that this is a strike vote if you actually have to go back to the members for province-wide, or is this job action?
What the commitment that we've made to our members, and the commitment I've made here to our parents, that before we were to go on a full-scale strike, as part of one of the things that we can do with a strike vote, we would have another BCTF member vote. Okay?
Jim, when you mentioned about first stage, are you talking about rotating strike?
Our first stage is a phased stage where we would be basically, it would affect administrative issues. It wouldn't affect report cards or communications with parents. It wouldn't affect voluntary activities, and it wouldn't have any school closures or rotating strikes. That's right. Okay, thanks for coming. Eh?